Intersectionality and Professional Breathwork. Hello, I'm Jim Morningstar, Director of Transformations Incorporated, founder of Therapeutic Breathwork, and co-director of the Global Professional Breathwork Alliance. As a clinical psychologist and professional breathworker and trainer since the mid-1970s, it's been my privilege and passion to be a student and teacher in the field of breathwork. As a student, I'm continually learning about the power and potential of conscious breathing practices, ancient techniques, and newly developed applications. My intent in addressing new and sometimes challenging topics in human growth and development is to show how I believe breathwork has a specific role to play in the cutting edge of our evolution at this time on our planet. Most current issues grow from seeds in the past, but the issues I select are being addressed with a new fervor by generations which have the courage to break the mold of outworn, institutionalized behaviors and public policies which allow fear to hold them in place. This is generally a collective fear. It's in all of us, not just a few in power. It's our fear that gives any oppressive model of leadership its power. This is where breathwork offers a tool for more than personal trauma release, but leads to collective consciousness revival and liberation. Intersectionality is broadly defined as the interconnected nature of social categorizations such as race, class, and gender, as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage, which, from my perspective, can also be sources of mutual learning, empowerment, and growth if owned and dealt with consciously and respectfully. Examples of these factors include gender, caste, sex, race, class, sexuality, religion, disability, physical appearance, and even height. These intersecting and overlapping social identities may be both empowering or oppressing. As a healing process, breathwork cuts across all this social classification and is not confined or defined by any one of them. As a breathworker or breathwork client, however, how we present ourselves and function in any one of these roles is influenced by all of our socially ascribed categories. I do not believe to be a quality healer we must endeavor to eliminate social roles, but I do believe an awareness of how they shape our perceptions and influence our communications and behaviors can help us minimize the way they can obstruct our work. Awareness can help us become conscious of our blind spots and more aware of the sensitivities of others, thus helping our acuity, or what I call holy vision, that is, seeing the whole person, including their fear-based personality and their spiritual core. We'll be looking at how cues of status have importance for our social identity and how it has shaped our personal identity, as well as the components of social identity that are most salient in our society. Now, some may have never considered these questions and are curious or dismissive of their importance to their situation. Remember, this is just the starting place. The next graphic from Josefina Alvarez shows a way of broadly categorizing typical power relationships in the United States. Different countries may have different versions of these categories, but also many similarities. The cultural characteristic of age or generation. The more powerful group is adults, and the less powerful group are children or older adults. The cultural characteristic of disability. The more powerful group are the temporarily able-bodied. The less powerful group are the persons with disabilities. Notice it says temporarily able-bodied because we all at any time could have an accident or a disease that would cause our disability. Cultural characteristic of religion. In this country, more powerful group, Christians. Less powerful group, other religions. Cultural characteristic of ethnicity. European Americans. Less powerful group, all others. Cultural characteristic of social class. More powerful group, upper and middle class. Less powerful group, lower income persons. Cultural characteristics of sexual orientation. More powerful group, heterosexual. Less powerful groups, gay men, lesbians, or bisexuals. Cultural characteristic of indigenous heritage. More powerful group, non-native persons. Less powerful group, native persons. Cultural characteristic of national origin. More powerful group, U.S.-born persons. Less powerful group, immigrants and refugees. Cultural characteristic, gender. More powerful group, men. Less powerful group, women, transgender persons. Now, there are societal situations in which these are overt prejudices and those in which they are unspoken expectations or assumptions that influence how people are treated, what rights they are given, or what can be expected of them. It's the unconscious perceptions and fears that we as breathworkers encounter when the emotional body is tapped into. The reactions and feelings that issue forth during a breathwork session from a client may be more surprising or embarrassing to them than they are to us. Acceptance and self-forgiveness are major tools in the healing of these intersectional woundings. I am suggesting we all have them to some degree or another in our emotional body, even if we intellectually think we are free from any reactivity to the world around us. Basics of Cultural Competence. Here are some basic aspects of cultural competency for practitioners. Bias is our tendency to think, act, and feel in a particular way. We all have biases. Privilege is access to or enjoying rights or advantages simply by membership of a particular group or identity. This is often unearned and or undeserved. Systems of privilege and oppression include racism, sexism, classism, ableism, ageism, heterosexism, etc. Based on our shared history, what is, quotes, normal for us influences our work as a practitioner. Privilege socializes us to be less aware of our biases and structures that promote them. This is true in any society or subculture. We grow up with certain rights and resources and take them for granted, not realizing that not everyone has them. This could be as simple as the ability to walk down the street and not be harassed or suspected as a criminal. Privilege can be contextual and multidimensional. An individual might have the privilege in one context when contrasted with those who do not have that particular privilege. For example, in our culture, men have the privilege of going shirtless in public, whereas women do not. Women have the privilege of being more affectionate in public with one another than men do. But individuals also interact with a continuum of dimensions of privilege: gender, race, socioeconomic status, etc., consciously or unconsciously all the time, rather than in discrete pockets of privilege. How do you interact with your continuum of privilege or disadvantage? Defensive reactions can also take place to fight fear, pain, or shame. We can be less defensive about privilege if we view it as multidimensional, everyone having advantages and disadvantages, and taking responsibility for awareness of our own and what we are called to do to help equalize a polarizing distribution of rights and privileges. For example, one time in our history in the United States, men had to come to terms with their privilege of the right to vote and recognize the disadvantage that put women in our society. It took this realization and a willingness to change that so that all parties could exercise their rights and privileges and have the society as a whole benefit from it. Humility, self-awareness, and critical thinking facilitate work across lines of privilege and oppression. But they're not enough. Awareness, ongoing learning, and consultation with those outside of our niche are essential. As breathworkers, I believe we have a commitment to ongoing self and community education, which holds the spiritual sacredness of every individual and the ongoing learning and new understanding about human dynamics in the healing process, which involves intersectionality. Both of these skills keep us fresh and growing as individual practitioners and as a community of professionals.